Some people don't just think. They disappear into their own mind. They can be sitting in a classroom, walking down the street, lying in bed, or listening to someone talk. And suddenly, they are somewhere else entirely. A different life. A different version of themselves. A conversation that never happened. A future that might never come. A memory rewritten with a better ending. And most people assume this is just distraction. But psychology suggests daydreaming is much deeper than that. Because people who daydream all the time are not always avoiding life. Sometimes their mind is trying to understand it. One of the biggest reasons people daydream so much is connected to something neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is a system in the brain that becomes active when you are not focused on the outside world. When you are resting, imagining, remembering, planning, reflecting, or thinking about yourself, this network becomes active. In simple words, when the world gets quiet, the inner world gets louder. And for some people, that inner world is extremely vivid. They don't just think in simple thoughts. They think in scenes, stories, emotions, future conversations, possible versions of their life. Their mind becomes a private movie theater, and sometimes that movie feels more emotionally alive than reality. Psychologist Jerome Singer studied daydreaming and described different types of inner fantasy. He believed not all daydreaming is unhealthy. Some daydreaming can be constructive. It helps people imagine possibilities, process emotions, rehearse future situations, and create meaning from experience. This is why creative people often daydream deeply. Their brain is connecting ideas that don't obviously belong together. A random memory connects with a future goal. A feeling becomes a story. A problem becomes an imagined conversation. And suddenly, the mind finds meaning in places logic alone could not reach. But daydreaming becomes psychologically complicated when it stops being imagination and starts becoming escape. For many people, constant daydreaming begins when reality feels emotionally unsatisfying. Maybe their real life feels boring. Maybe they feel lonely. Maybe they feel unseen. Maybe they feel powerless. Maybe they are carrying emotions they don't know how to express. So the mind creates another world, a world where they are understood, wanted, confident, loved, respected, powerful, in control. This is one of the hidden emotional functions of daydreaming. It gives the mind what reality does not. If someone feels ignored in real life, they may daydream about being admired. If someone feels powerless, they may daydream about being strong. If someone feels lonely, they may daydream about deep connection. If someone feels misunderstood, they may create imaginary conversations where they are finally heard. And this is where daydreaming becomes emotionally addictive. Because the imagined world provides relief. Not permanent relief, but enough to return to it again and again. This is similar to what psychologists call avoidance coping. Avoidance coping happens when the mind tries to reduce emotional discomfort by mentally escaping instead of directly facing the problem. And sometimes, this helps temporarily. But if it becomes the main way someone handles pain, they may start living more in imagination than in action. This is why some people daydream intensely but struggle to move forward in real life. Their mind creates beautiful possibilities, but their body stays stuck. They imagine the conversation, but never send the message. They imagine the successful future, but avoid the difficult first step. They imagine becoming confident, but escape the situations that would actually build confidence. The fantasy gives emotional satisfaction before real effort begins, and that can weaken motivation. Another important idea is called maladaptive daydreaming. This term was introduced by psychologist Eli Sommer to describe immersive daydreaming that becomes excessive, hard to control, and disruptive to daily life. People with maladaptive daydreaming may spend hours inside imagined stories, characters, relationships, or fantasy worlds. They may pace, listen to music, repeat scenes in their head, or feel emotionally attached to imagined situations. And the confusing part is, they may know it is interfering with life, but still feel pulled back into it, because the fantasy world feels emotionally safer. It doesn't reject them. It doesn't judge them. It doesn't disappoint them in the same unpredictable way real life does. But the cost is that real life can begin feeling less interesting, less rewarding, and harder to face. This does not mean every person who daydreams a lot has a problem. Daydreaming can be healthy. It can support creativity, emotional processing, planning, empathy, and self-reflection. The problem begins when daydreaming becomes the place someone goes to avoid their own life. There is also a connection between daydreaming and unmet emotional needs. Many people who daydream constantly are not lazy or careless. They are emotionally hungry. They crave something their real life is not giving them: recognition, freedom, adventure, safety, love, control. And the mind is trying to fill that gap symbolically. This is why daydreams often repeat the same themes. Someone who daydreams about being famous may not only want attention, they may want to feel significant. Someone who daydreams about romance may not only want a partner, they may want emotional safety. Someone who daydreams about revenge may not actually want to hurt anyone. They may want power after feeling helpless. Daydreams are often emotional clues. They reveal what the mind is missing. Another reason people daydream all the time is overactive future simulation. The human brain is designed to imagine the future. Psychologists sometimes call this mental time travel. It allows us to prepare, predict, and plan. But when the mind becomes too active, it starts rehearsing endless possible lives. What if I said this? What if I had chosen differently? What if one day everything changes? What if they finally understand me? This can become both comforting and painful. Comforting because the future still feels open. Painful because the present starts feeling disappointing by comparison. And some people become attached not to reality, but to possibility. They fall in love with what could happen, not what is happening. That is why constant daydreaming can sometimes create emotional distance from the present moment. The person is physically here, but psychologically somewhere else. And over time, they may begin feeling disconnected from real relationships, real goals, and real emotions. The goal is not to stop daydreaming completely. That would be unrealistic, and maybe even unhealthy. The goal is to understand what your daydreams are trying to tell you. Ask yourself, what emotion keeps appearing in my daydreams? What version of myself do I keep becoming there? What need is my mind trying to meet? What am I avoiding in real life? Because once you understand the emotional message inside the fantasy, you can begin bringing part of it into reality. If you daydream about being confident, maybe your real life needs small acts of courage. If you daydream about being loved, maybe your real life needs deeper emotional honesty. If you daydream about escaping, maybe your real life needs change, not just imagination. Daydreaming is not the enemy. It is a signal, a window into the emotional life beneath the surface. But when the dream becomes safer than reality, the mind slowly learns to retreat instead of live. And healing begins when you stop using imagination only as an escape and start using it as a map. Because your inner world may be showing you something important, not just what you want to imagine, but what your real life is asking you to build. If this video connected with you, comment which part felt most true. And if you enjoy deep psychology content like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more videos about human behavior, emotions, self-awareness, and the hidden patterns of the mind. See you in the next one.